Could this be the last lost peak? Well, let's build a cairn on top of last lost peak. Last lost peak, elevation 11,250 feet, estimated. Probably one of the last unclimbed 11,000-foot peaks in Idaho, and one of the last holdouts for no USGS elevation. Built Summit Cairn Left Register. Rick Bogger, Idaho Falls, Idaho, August 10, 1991. Kyrie eleison, Lord have mercy. Speaking of the USGS, looking across the way is Idaho's highest peak under 12,000 feet. USGS peak, just a few feet short of 12,000 feet elevation. To the right or north of USGS peak is our next destination, 11,724 foot Clyde P. Ross Peak. Clyde Ross worked many decades for the United States Geological Survey, and he is oftentimes called the Dean of Idaho Geologists. More about Clyde Ross as we ascend his peak. Moving right from Ross, we see the state's highest peak, Bora, 12,662 feet. And between us and Bora lies some of the most rugged, remote stretches of the Lost River Range. That would be Massacre Mountain. The Donkey Hills divide Passamaquoddy Valley and Little Lost River Valley. In the distance is a wonderful view of the southern section of Lemhi Range, Big Creek Peak, Iron Creek Point, Bear Mountain, Portland Mountain, Gilmore Peak, Sheep Mountain, Mount Inspiration, Mount Perspiration, Humblebee Peak, Bell Mountain, the Clapper, Goats R Us, Home, First, Second, Third, the Baseball Peaks, Lexi's Peak, Amy's Peak, the Brow, Diamond Peak, Riddler, Big Boy, Shoshone John, Little Diamond Peak, Nicholson Peak. The Uncle Ike Divide would be the low point in the Lemhi Range. And we have the Lemhi Quadricephalus, 4 10,000-foot peaks, and the Lemhi Triumvirate, consisting of Gloved, Shrill, and Striped Peak. Tyler, Hoops, Great Western, Saddle Mountain provide us with an unsurpassed panorama of the southern Lemhi Range. The southern section of the Lost River Range, the range that we're in, shows Mud Lake and Sunset Peak, and the two twins, North Twin, South Twin, Jaggles, Ramshorn, King's Crown, King Mountain, and the road coming up from Arco, Highway 93, would be straight ahead. So you could see this peak from Highway 93. It would look very obscure just behind Invisible Mountain. There's the map. Nolan Lake, and the last lost peak. Shadow Lake. The last lost peak is right here. And we're going to move over to Clyde Ross Peak. There are lots of good hiking possibilities up here. There's more tundra than you would expect. The terrain is fairly gentle, hikeable. We just have about a 600-foot drop down this gentle slope, and then up a gentle slope for the most part to Clyde Ross Peak. You can believe it's a hot one in this valley. It's a 4-quart day today, folks. And this is what we mean by a 4-quart day. Wasser, agua, lo, nero. Whatever you know it by, we can't live without it, that's for sure. Clyde Ross was born in 1891 in New York City. He graduated from Massachusetts Institute of Technology and Harvard University. He died in the Denver area in 1965. But it's what he did in between those years that most concerns us here. Clyde Ross gave leadership to the development of the first comprehensive geologic map of the state of Idaho. In 1957, he was the project manager for the USGS 15-minute quadrangle, which encompasses the area of the Lemhi Range that we are scanning right now. And in 1947, when I was just a wee 1-year-old, Clyde Ross was project chief of the USGS Bora Peak 60-minute quadrangle, the forerunner to today's 15-minute quadrangle. And the area that we're scanning now, to Bora Peak straight ahead, was encompassed in Ross's work. The peak is just a few paces ahead. Join me, won't you, as we summit? Please note, I can say with a great deal of certainty that there are no higher unclimbed peaks than this remaining in the state of Idaho. And it is with humble thanks to the Lord God Almighty that you and I can stand on top of Clyde Ross Peak today, elevation 11,724 feet. We will build a cairn at the high point and leave a biographical sketch of Clyde Ross on his summit. I'm going to leave this copy of the biographical sketch on Clyde Ross that's on file at the Field Records Library of the USGS in Denver. And we just made a notation that we've climbed the peak today. And in this case, the man matches the mountain. Clyde Ross's 3 loves were geology, Idaho, and horses. And he certainly could experience all 3 right where we're standing. Long Lost Canyon. The Lemhi Range forms the horizon, with the Little Lost River Valley separating the two ranges. The peak that we were on a little earlier, we will retrace our steps to its summit. Last Lost Peak. We can just barely see a corner of the Big Lost Valley looking to Arco. Now, I didn't say all of the 11,000-foot peaks in Idaho have been climbed. I'm sure there are some unclimbed ones. That would be a challenge for somebody. USGS Peak, the neighbor 2 miles away. Looking towards Thousand Springs Valley and the upper end of the Big Lost River Valley. Mount Andrews. Takes us full circle on Clyde Peak. The summit flower on Clyde Peak is the alpine forget-me-not. And Clyde Ross, we will not forget you and your contribution to geology in the state of Idaho. Way down in there would be Shadow Lake Peak. Ross Peak is the highest peak in the cirque of this branch of Long Lost Canyon, which is called Hell Canyon on the map. Actually, it looks like a very nice place to go sometime. But for us, it's time to head down and back to the Pass Creek summit area, which is in that direction. And now we can utter the word that every explorer longs for. I've been there. Thank you for coming along on another successful outing in Chalice National Forest, Idaho. This is Rick Bogger.